This story is about a man, it's about his family, and it's about a betrayal which changed the very essence of what it means to be a Russian. It wiped out 1,000 years of tradition and history in one night. We're going to be talking about Tsar Nikolai II, his family, and what happened to the family known as the Romanovs. Every nation has a moment in history where some big change happens. Some big event makes everything else become different. And for Russia, it was when Tsar Nicholas was overthrown by the Bolsheviks. So the Bolsheviks were a group of communists, as best you can call them, and they overthrew the last king. Now, you got to remember something very specific. The Bolsheviks were atheists. They did not believe in God. They outlawed the Orthodox Church. And many Russians historically have been Orthodox. So not only was this a betrayal of the king and Russian values, this was a betrayal of the Russian faith. So when this event happened, the very soul of Russia was at stake. To help set the scene of the story, I want to say a big thank you to Angelica from TV network Spac, who invited us to go see the bdmuseum.ru, which is the Belaya Datcha museum, where there are relics of Tsar Nikolai II, his family, and the Romanovs. It is also attached to this beautiful church, which we did ceremony in just before we started our tour. So a big thank you for Angelica and Spac for inviting myself and my family over. We had a great time, and we got to see some of these real relics in real time and learn a lot about the history of the Romanovs and the point of view of what people on the side of the Romanovs and the imperial Russia thought about the time of change through to communism. So hope you guys enjoy the content. If you do, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the time period and what you know about Tsar Nikolai II. How did he lose his power and who was he betrayed by? So the generals of the time, they forced Nicholas' abdication, and this was in 1917. Nicholas II, he didn't abdicate because protesters stormed the palace like it was written. No. It was in March 1917, while Nicholas was at the army headquarters, senior generals and commanders, and this is including Alexei and Brusilov, told them that basically the army would not suppress any civil unrest. His removal was necessary to save the state and the subsequent war effort, because you got to remember World War I is kicking off, and this was the worst possible time. We're talking the entire soul and history of Russia upending with one of the greatest wars humans have had known to date, and you have all these new machines coming through, all these new weapons, the fast-firing weapons. It was a real chaotic time, and for Russia specifically, it would be the worst possible time for something like this to happen, and it did. This is what's crucial. The army withdrew its loyalty first. Without the army, the Tsar had no power. If you can't enforce, can't rule. So the army effectively chose a concept of stability over loyalty. So Russia was exhausted by World War I. It was in such a bad state. It could have completely fallen apart at that point. So supply failures, deportations, morale collapse was blamed on Nicholas. The generals believed basically removing the Tsar would preserve the army or some form of the army. So all your white officers and white imperial rulers felt that they could be protected or preserved. Now I want you to understand, when I say white and red, what that refers to is the reds were communist and the whites were imperial. So two types of Russian thought patterns. The imperials were for old Russia, Orthodox values and whatnot. The reds, predominantly communist ideologies, atheist ideologies, and more of the working class type of ideology, even though there's a lot of debate about how much of the actual working class the communists actually had behind them. So that's a whole separate story, and then it's quite an interesting one actually too. Instead of defending the sovereign that they were told to defend, that they were made to defend, they pressured him to step aside, and that's when this cascade of events started happening. So after abdication, the army did nothing. Once Nicholas abdicated, the army did not protect him. There was no attempt to make to secure the imperial family. Most of them were assassinated, if not all of them. There is rumors that one of them escaped. And then when the Bolsheviks later seized power, the military hierarchy has already fractured, and a lot of the Reds installed their own officers, killed any imperial officers, destroyed money, destroyed anything that made imperials basically remembered. So it's almost like a wipe of history, if you will. So it was a terrible time. Now, this is the next and important part, and not a lot of people talk about this, and this is a really, really important part of history. This is how the church betrayed Nicholas. And this, like I said, it's going to be a lot more uncomfortable because Tsar Nicholas was the defender of orthodoxy. So for the church to betray him, and then later for the church to get, I guess almost, well, pretty much outlawed, I think is a little bit of, poetic justice, some people believe. So the church accepted the abdication immediately, which is strange because the church could have actually been a cornerstone of having him in power, right? The Russian Orthodox Church had taught for centuries that the Tsar had ruled by, divine appointment, although, look, it's something that people didn't really believe. They kind of just, like, the way they believed in that was more, look, God wills this to happen, and so on and so forth. Not like God specifically, like by, directly involving himself is making this person the divine ruler in that sort of way. Not like in the medieval times where some people believed the king was specifically ordained by God to be the ruler. And they just knew that this was how it's meant to be, sort of thing, right? The Russian Orthodox Church had taught for centuries that, Tsar was divine by appointment. Loyalty to the Tsar was also, even this is normal for the time, it was almost a religious way of thinking. So really important. So years after his abdication, the Holy Synod recognized the provincial government. Prayers for the Tsar were removed from services, so, we're basically, wiping history once again. No public resistance was organized by church leadership, and that's what was interesting, because if they wanted to, they could have, and they didn't. So spiritually speaking, that's when Orthodoxy died. Not died, but it failed that day, let's just say, in the context of this event. Someone in the comment section is going to rip my ass for that one. So silence when the Tsar was imprisoned. After Nicholas and his family were placed under arrest, the church did not demand their release. No mass mobilization, no excommunication threats, no coordinated protests from the senior clergy. So similar to the army, there was just silence. Absolute silence. Now, some individual priests did remain loyal, but it was, kind of under wraps and whatnot, and some of those guys had to go underground. So it was the Tsar just had the worst series of events possible on his plate, and they all kind of came together. Now, canonization came too late. So Nicholas and his family were executed in 1918, and they were only canonized, so sainthood, in 2000 after the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, the church honored him after it was safe, not before, and not when it mattered, really. So, look, there's a lot of people that will say don't judge the church and don't judge the communists and whatnot, because whatever happened was supposed to happen for Russia to survive the subsequent war and then World War II. And, as the Soviets, they were able to survive, not only survive, but also win World War II for the world. So it's hard to be too judgmental. Like, it's very difficult to point the finger. But a lot of Russians do agree that it was a betrayal that changed the history of Russia for a worse pattern. Now, there's a lot of people that can have a big debate about it, saying, well, you know what, it was already in a bad state. Economically speaking, it wasn't in a good spot. And with this war about to kick off, things were really going to test Russia's limits, right? But then there's actually another side of people that they said that Russia was actually growing in a way that started to threaten the Western powers to be. There was one particular statistic that was really scary, and this was appearing in French and English newspapers. that suggested that by the middle of the 20th century, by the end of the 20th century, Russia would have a population of 500 million. 500 million, guys, which would effectively, with the landmass that Russia has, make it into a unstoppable, undisputed superpower. Because for Russia, as it is today, population is one of its weaknesses. It needs more people. The birth rates aren't as what it should be. So that was one thing that scared a lot of the Western powers. So throughout their machinations and whatnot, it made sure that Russia wasn't able to do what it's supposed to do. And there was lots of rumors about the king, about Rasputin, about the queen, and all this sort of stuff. A lot of misinformation, not too dissimilar how we would see this information today. And back then the Russian Tsar lost the information war, and as a result, they paid the ultimate price, and so did Russia. So it's very important to learn your history and to also understand how to market well. Like as a country, even as a religion, as a people, you have to understand the skill of marketing, because the skill of marketing is effectively the skill of talking to people. And if you can't talk to people, if you can't get your ideas and messages across, you're not going to be a successful leader. So guys, what this is all coming down to is Nicholas II, the last great Tsar of Russia. He didn't fall because Russia rejected him. Now, it's very important. He fell because the institutions that gave him power, the cornerstones of Russian power, failed him. The army and the church withdrew their loyalty when it became inconvenient. And as a result, both the army and the church paid the ultimate price. And thank the Lord that Russia is now in 2025, the year it is today, it's a very different Russia. But we have to learn from our history. And as Putin has said, if you don't miss the Soviet Union, you have no heart. But if you want it back, you have no brain. And I think that is a very, very good way to put it. It's kind of ironic I'm making a video about this in a CCCP shirt, which is USSR. I bought this at a Rus Youth event for, there was a small company that they made it, and they have some cool Russian merch. So, look, being an Orthodox Christian, I definitely believe the path of the imperial Tsar and orthodoxy would have been the best way for Russia. But you can't cry over spilled milk, as it were. That being said, guys, I want to say a massive thank you once again to the Spac TV network and Angelica and to everyone else that attended the event. My family and I loved it. It was a great event. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video about Tsar Nicholas and have a little bit of understanding about Russian history, Russian faith, and what made Russia it is today. So when a lot of people talk about imperial Russia, this is the time period that we're talking about. And just after that, the Soviet Union is where a lot of you guys would know your history from. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If there's any questions, you know what to do down below. And I will see you guys on the next one. And thanks again for tuning in. Volko the Russian's out.